We surf, we shop, we spend, and all along the way we share our private information with the world around us. During the holidays, we get the newest high-tech gifts that also aid outsiders in tracking us and predicting our behavior. So it's no surprise with all this information floating around that identity theft is at an all-time high. Tonight, keeping yourself and your family safe from high-tech predators. I'm Ernie Manous, and this is Houston 8. It's that time of year when we rush from store to store trying to finish all our shopping. Along the way, we leave clues as to who we are, where we have been, and what we desire. At home or at work, we take advantage of the internet for conversation, information, and even more shopping. We tweet, Facebook, and blog, sharing who we are with our family and friends, but also with many others who we have never met or will ever know. And all this information we are sharing lives on long after we have moved on. Once shared, either in person or online, emails, social security numbers, passwords are all recorded and often stored. 25 years ago, we were warned to take the carbon paper between credit card receipts. But in today's technologically advancing world, what, if anything, can protect us now? Somebody is watching everything we do, and again we ask, what are they doing with all the information they are gathering? Joining us tonight are Officer Jacob Webb, Houston Police Department, Dr. Christopher Bronk, Baker Institute Fellow, Rice University, and Dr. Dennis Adams, Professor at the C.T. Bauer College of Business at the University of Houston. Welcome to two of you back again, and to our new member joining us. We talked about this topic a couple months back and hadn't finished because there was so much that we were talking about. And with the holidays coming up, we thought, it's even more important now for people to realize what is going on with all of this out there. But I want to pick up where we left off last time, and we didn't get to talk about Google and Google searches and all of that goes on. Now, to catch everyone up to date, too, your IP address tells you everyone who you are through the internet world. If Dr. Bronk can explain a little about IPs before we get going.
Okay, so IP address is just, it's your virtual address, it's your mailbox, it's who you are online. It's when you send messages, it's how those messages know where they're coming from and how to get back.
And each computer has a unique IP address.
Exactly. That's tied to a piece of hardware inside your computer.
So, and when you send emails, messages, post things, they can track you back, and they will get into who they are in a minute.
Yeah.
But by your IP address, so we know it's you.
Well, the IP address is one way, but also for convenience, we often ask for little programs and pieces of programs to be downloaded onto our computers called cookies. Those are the things that when you enter your username and password to another website, and another website, that's going to, when you go back, it tells you, oh, you were here before, and we remember your username and password. And
I wasn't going to go there, but explain cookies a little bit more, because you always see you can store up too many cookies, they can slow down. What exactly are cookies doing?
Really, it's just a file on your computer.
And it's on my computer, but why is that a threat then?
Well, it can be a threat if you visit a website and it puts a cookie that provides some instructions to your computer on something you may not want it to do.
And does it then give information back to a source?
It can. All sorts of software can be put on your machine on a regular basis, everything from clandestinely placed viruses all the way to very innocuous cookies that pass along information on where you've been going. I recommend, we're going to talk about Google, I recommend visiting Google Privacy, which will tell you your Google searches. It's a very interesting topic.
Well, and this is what fascinates me, and I've read this in my research, that since the beginning of Google, they have saved every search that has ever been done through their system, since they were in a college dorm room starting out. So today they have, from every IP address, every search that computer has ever done.
What is valuable to Google is who you are and all of the things that you've done in an online world. So it's hugely important for them to keep track of everything that Dennis did through Google, whether I searched for a power saw, whether I searched for a pair of shoes, because the more they know about me, the more they can target their ads to me. And once their ads are targeted towards me, then that increases the chances that I'm going to click on one of those ads, and they get paid for all the click-throughs that I do.
Now, we say Google, do all the search engines do this for the most part? Is this
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the way they make money, is by targeting advertising to the user based upon what they've done in the past.
Okay, officer. So that sounds great. I'm going to get we've had this conversation before on this show. I'm going to get the ads that I want. What's wrong?
Well, the problem with that is that when you talk about suspects or individuals that are looking for you, searching for information on a computer or on a database, that's what they go to. They hopefully will go to a website or go to take the fact that you have left your computer open or not safe as far as any type of virus protections or whatever, and they capture that information, and they basically anything from your Social Security numbers to how you paid Visa and how you electronically send a check. And they use that to basically commit identity theft.
In the big brother world that we've been affectionately calling these shows that we've been talking about this technology, so Google saves up my searches. Why is that a threat to me?
I'll jump in on that one. I wouldn't say it's a distinct threat to you.
It could be, though.
Now, Google has been very, very proactive about saying their policy is do no evil. That's their corporate policy, because they do have big brother capability. And you look, if you've bought into other Google services, so they have mail now. So if anyone who's read Gmail, you see that little ad block above your emails. And I send a lot of rather unusual emails through Google talking about all sorts of odd topics. And I see all sorts of things pop up there, and it tells me how much they know me. The question is so Google says they will do no evil. What is the yardstick for evil?
Another part.
I think we're going to get the yardstick.
Well, let's broaden this just past Google. Although Google's certainly the 800-pound gorilla, but if we just start thinking about all the internet sites that are out there that we're sharing information with. Some of those are very well run, and they're managed well, and they're very ethical, and they really treat their customers' data as if it's their own. Other companies, however, they don't have that same attention to detail. So what happens when we start using internet sites is we'll use Google with a certain level of comfort, but then we go to xyz.com, not that particular site, but and share information, thinking it's just as safe as any of the other things we've done, and then we find out that we've either authorized them to do something with our credit card that we didn't intend, or we've provided phishing information where we've allowed them to collect other data about us so that they can use our information incorrectly, or they end up selling our data without our permission. And we've got lots of examples of that.
And that also makes me think, too, okay, so we say Google is great and Google is fine, and we think, but who knows who's going to own Google 10 years from now? Where is all of this going with the mergers and the buyouts and all that? And that information is stored. That information is kept. That's
correct.
You look like you want to jump in there.
Oh, yeah. And that's where, from a law enforcement standpoint, it becomes a problem, because we can say the CEOs or the vice presidents are ethical, but how do you know the mid-level employee is ethical? If you have all this data stored, for example, I'm a veteran. Several years ago, a guy walked away with a disc with veterans information on it. My information was on it. I've been out the military for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. But that's the problem. You never know who's going to come along, who's going to have access, who's going to buy the company, and are they going to be ethical?
Right.
And that creates a problem.
Another question, and I'm sorry I keep going back to Google, but Gmail. You brought up Gmail. Mm-hmm. As I understand it, you delete your message on Gmail. You go to your deleted file. You absolutely delete it. Google holds those emails for at least 2 months. Why?
Well, okay, so Google has a problem that it's running a whole lot of email now for people. Google doesn't want to keep your email around forever, and your employer probably doesn't want to keep your email around forever. Nobody really wants it. It takes up space. It costs money to store it away. But when our email gets lost, so many of us use our email as our de facto organizer for everything. I mean, without my email, That's most of my conversations that revolve around my job. So we want our email to be stored a lot of the time. And just to make it magically go away and say, well, wipe it, it's not just on one computer someplace. It may be in a data center in Oregon, or it may be in a data center in Iceland, or someplace else.
But shouldn't we have the knowledge that if we hit that delete button, well, okay, personal responsibility comes into this. We've all called our IT departments wherever we work or at home and said, oh my God, I lost this document.
I hit delete.
Right, but ultimately that's your mistake if you should delete it. I would think that we should have some sort of regulation that if somebody believes they have erased a file, that file needs to be erased. Why is that not practiced?
Well, you have to keep in mind how Google makes their money. So when you sign up for a Gmail account, you accept the fact that they're going to scan your emails and then try to target ads based upon the things you email about.
So your emails are not private. If I'm sending an email to you, other eyes are seeing my email, and people need to be aware of that. Maybe they're not human eyes.
Yeah. Without a doubt, that's the way you should always treat your email, whether it's Hotmail or Gmail or Yahoo Mail or your corporate mail. That there is no expectation of privacy with your email, because the way we ship email around literally the world, there's no expectation of privacy. You shouldn't put anything in an email that you really don't want the world to see.
Okay.
Every email is a postcard. If you think about it that way,
yeah,
there's no envelope around it.
Okay, and my last thing on Google, and then I promise I'm moving on. As I understood, in California, they were doing some regulations to try and put some provisions on all of this when it came to search engines and emails and all that, and Google opted out of that discussion. They did not want to be involved, and then this bill, I'm not sure if it's law yet or not, moves forward, and Google is left out, so they don't have to adhere to these same policies. Does anyone know what I'm talking about, and does that? How do you work that? How do you work around that?
California has a very long history of kind of going their own direction when it comes to privacy legislation, whether it's an RFID bill or it has to do
RFID.
with radio frequency identification tags, the tags that are on CDs or any products these days. California created their own law about how to manage RFID tags. They have their own set of legal reasoning about email. So in one sense, it's not unusual for a company like Google, which has a worldwide presence, to say, we don't want to be bound by kind of this provincial law, although it is an awfully big state. They want to take a larger view. So that wasn't all that unusual, but it was, I think, a very interesting first shot at what information search engines do collect about us, and it'll eventually, I think, go to a national sort of
and as we move on, just to support Google for a moment here, in 2005, the Justice Department had wanted the search records for, I guess it was Google, MSN, Yahoo, and AOL. Google fought it, won, and was able to hold on and keep it private. So they were out there fighting for your rights, and so if they're good or bad, we'll let time decide on all of that. Yeah. So we move forward in time now, and it's the holiday season, and people are out there, and there's two different ways I want to go on this topic. There are people buying up technology at an alarming rate, not realizing what they're bringing into their homes. Now, not that these are massive threats that we're talking about, but they are things that can reveal your information. What are people buying right now? I'll go to Officer Webb on this, and what are the things that they should be watching for when they're purchasing?
Well, I mean, just with any electronic device, there's always, when you have to log on and you have to add something to it, whether it be an iPod, music, it can be tracked.
Cell phones are big.
Cell
one
phones.
for this.
All these things can be tracked. Mm-hmm. So you have to be careful that, if you're going to get one for a legitimate purpose, know that possibly someone can possibly track you on that device.
Now, we've talked a lot about the corporations that run these, and even on our last show, and we talk about the people that gather the data and sell the data and all that. But outside of the official business that's going on, there are a lot of other groups that have figured out ways to hack into all of these things.
Correct. Look at a situation where you have a disgruntled employee gets fired. He or she might be a VP, it might be an IT person. Guess what they normally do? There are some businesses now that won't allow you to come in with a flash drive to store data. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, the new building for the FBI, and we actually have members of HPD assigned over there, you cannot bring your cell phone or a flash drive into that building for the simple fact of possibly stealing information. And with that, I mean, you have to understand that Big Brother's always going to be watching, but there are other people that are watching that possibly can hack into your information.
Okay, Dr. Brown. I live in the modern age. I'm going to have a cell phone. I'm going to have a home computer. I'm going to have a laptop. I'm going to have a GPS in my car. How do I make sure I'm safe?
Well, it's all about balancing risk. So, and the most important thing is not to be the most vulnerable target. It's to be less vulnerable than the most vulnerable target. That's really the key.
Just not
piece.
be the worst singer on American Idol, and
exactly.
you'll make it through.
You won't get voted off, right? Yeah. So, I mean, look. Personal computer, of all the technologies that are going to be sold this Christmas, the one that has the greatest capacity to do damage to you is your personal computer. Period.
Okay, people have just freaked out now hearing that. Explain a little more.
Okay, so personal computers, I won't target a certain large operating system manufacturer based in Redmond, Washington. Basically, the infrastructure for the personal computer hasn't been secure. The internet was designed to be very open. It was designed by a bunch of scientists to facilitate scientific collaboration and communication, not to lock away data the right way. And the computers we buy, personal computers, PCs, but we can talk about security problems with other kinds of computers, Macintoshes. It's just the PC is the biggest target. It's the biggest part of the market segment. So there are all these pieces of malicious software out there that can attack a personal computer. And the only way to protect yourself is to have antivirus. And what does all antivirus is a database that says, this is everything we know about today. And if you have a vulnerability, if there, and we find them all the time, smart people all around the planet just find holes all the time. And before we knew about it, someone wasn't talking about it, but they might have known. So this, it should freak people out. There was a great story in the Houston Chronicle last couple of weeks about people having child pornography placed on their computers. Is this an excuse for the pornographers? Someone put it there, or was a computer taken over? Was it made a zombie robot, and was it a server for these folks who are very sophisticated in where they put their child pornography?
So then, what do you do? I mean, how can you? I'm going to go back to Officer Webb on this. How do we protect ourselves?
Well, again, it's a situation where personal responsibility. If you know you have a computer and you leave it on, for example, at work, if I type into my system, which can check anyone nationally or anywhere else, I have to know once I leave that computer, cut it off, shut it down, where only my password will work. Because oftentimes what we do, we'll leave our computer open. That opens for predator viruses, like you said, and individuals searching. There are programs that actually will search to see computers that are left on and open to the internet, and they steal your information. Because sometimes we do our banking online, most of us, a lot of us, we pay our bills online. And again, all that information is stored on a computer and anyone at any given time. So you have to be mindful of buy the virus software.
Antivirus software, firewalls.
Firewalls, exactly.
Passwords on your routers.
Correct.
I have a router at my house. For the longest time, I didn't put a password on it. I
Exactly.
thought, well, I'm just using it. But people can come back in through the router into your computer, in your hard drives, correct?
Correct.
Okay, it's that time of year where everyone is in a hurry. And I have fallen victim to this myself. Wow, there's these new great programs. You can just put your credit card information in. Every time you need it, you just hit it and it'll fill out the forms for you. Probably not the wisest thing to do.
No. Go ahead.
Well, in fact, the whole notion of identity theft really kind of starts with your financial information. Identity theft as a phrase doesn't make any sense, really, because I'm not stealing your identity. If you have a hammer and I steal your hammer, you don't have access to your hammer anymore. I've got your hammer. But with identity theft, you are using your identity, and I'm using your identity, and that's what makes this kind of a real difficult thing to address, because you're trying to be who you are, and I'm trying to be who you are too, and that messes up your finances, your personal life. So one of the things we have to do, particularly at the holidays, because we have so many transactions going on, online transactions in restaurants, transactions in your local mall, is you have to be vigilant. You have to go and look at every one of those transactions on your statement. Get online and say, okay, did I really buy this? Was this how much I really thought I spent in the mall? Keep your receipts. and even if you don't do this the rest of the year, during the holidays when the targets are so vast, look at your receipts and match them up. Did I really make these purchases? Being vigilant, that thing, whether it's your passwords or your statements, that's the key defense to making sure you're not hurt any worse than you might have been.
I heard a phrase once, or a story, I guess, very brief story, that we're always so worried home shopping or on the computer to give our credit card information, but when we're in a store, we will hand our credit card to someone who walks away for a few minutes with it. And yet, we're more worried about these unknown things than someone who could just walk away and write down. How do you protect yourself in that situation?
This is what I tell when I go out and do presentations to seniors and others. That's my specialty. That's what I do. Credit card abuse, identity theft. I've been doing that for the past 8 years on a federal level as well as a local level. Mm-hmm. What I do, believe it or not, I go and get a prepaid card. Guess what that card doesn't do like any other check card or debit card that goes to my accounts? Most of us, we all have overdraft protection. So if I have $50,000 in my savings account and I might have $800 in my checking account, someone steals my identity or steals my credit card. That's called credit card skimming. Okay, and Houston is very, very one of the leading cities in that type of crime. We've arrested a multitude of people in restaurants, what have you, with skimming devices that captures your credit card numbers and PIN numbers. Mm-hmm. So what I tell people, get a preloaded card. Guess what? You can go get a preloaded card, load that card. Guess what? The amount of money you put on that card is what your liability is. Not your checking account, not your savings account. Because if I steal your credit card and I skim it at a local restaurant, anywhere where you use your credit card, it can be skimmed. If I do that, I can wipe your whole account out. You can still have your credit card in your hand, and you'll never know. Depending on your bank, and depending on how diligent they are as far as watching how you spend your money, they won't call you. So what I tell people, when you go, and if you do use your credit card, again, watch where you use it. Make sure you keep the receipt. You go home and you check that. Most and probably one of the most important things you can do before you start the shopping season, check your credit bureau reports. You know why? Because everything you do pretty much is tracked by those 3 agencies, credit bureau agencies. Mm-hmm. You check and make sure, because what happens is when someone's trying to open up credit in your name, it's going to be on your credit bureau report. And you want to make sure that you check those. They're free once a year because the Social Security number is basically all our lifelines. I mean, that's what happens. Once I can obtain your credit card, your Social Security number, I can open up anything. Because, as a government, we don't really look at it the way it probably should be. Social Security number was never designed to identify us. That wasn't the reason. It was basically for taxes, plain and simple.
Dr. Adams?
Well, I really want to echo what the officer just said, because being vigilant is absolutely critical. Going back and checking your statements is a very easy first step. One of the other things that we want to realize is just as you mentioned, it doesn't necessarily happen online. One of the kind of insidious parts about online credit card theft is that the thieves are able to collect thousands of credit cards in one swoop, and then sell them online in batches, and they sell them in batches of thousands or even tens of thousands for relatively small amounts of money per card. So while we do worry about the online part, during the holidays, it's going to be at the restaurant, it's going to be at the Hallmark store, it's going to be at individual places where you just routinely are going to give your credit card to somebody without kind of thinking about it. Now, do keep in mind that you have more protections using your credit card than using your debit card. Mm-hmm. So for the most part, we encourage folks, leave your debit cards at home. We've trained ourselves in our personal money management schemes to use your debit card wherever, because that's a great way of kind of controlling cash flow. But when you're out and about, particularly in the holidays, use the credit card, because the banks are going to protect you more than you're going to get with a debit card.
Interesting. Didn't realize that. Dr. Bronk. any closing thoughts on all this?
Well, on the online side, so people are really worried about their credit card being stolen online. PayPal has a service that it's unique, but I'm sure will be adopted fairly widely. One-time card. So you say you want a transaction, it generates a number, it's good for that transaction and that transaction only, and then it goes away. So the number gets compromised and stolen, it's no good.
That's interesting. And the new technology, in that case, helping us to protect ourselves as opposed to leaving us open to threats. Officer, I'll give you the final word since this is your area of expertise.
Well, first and foremost, if you're going to go shopping, the basic things, even not about identity theft, but don't leave your bags in your car. Don't put them in. Don't put them in your back seat. Watch your surroundings. Watch where you park your vehicle. Well-lit areas, things of that nature. If you're a female, whether female or male, go with someone to the mall. Don't go by yourself. When it comes to credit cards, just be diligent about where you use your credit cards and know how many times you actually used it.
It's funny, in all this talk of technology, we forget there are still the everyday common criminals going to steal your purse and steal stuff there.
Correct.
And with those little cards now, they have access to everything we are.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in. And now it's time for me to remind you that we invite you each week to visit our home online at HoustonPBS.org. Simply click on the local program bar, pick Houston 8, and then you can join our online community. There you can read about the guests, learn more about the topic, share your thoughts and ideas, and even suggest questions that we might ask during upcoming episodes. Remember, information posted on our website may be used on air, so keep that in mind when submitting. That does it for us tonight. Until next time, I'm Ernie Manous. Have a happy holiday season.